By the way, Stewart Rhodes, founder of Oath Keepers, is traveling around the country giving speeches and organizing folks, and he brought quite a train of other patriots with him. Brandon Smith of alt-market.com, dealing with alternative market systems to get around the globalist one world cashless society control grid that I was just talking about, that in their own words is to be run by a private banking consortium to, quote, end our industrial world. They want a post-industrial world. So it's the banking cartel waging war against the real economy. And then popping in the last segment of this hour, Michael Bolden of the 10th Amendment Center, who I believe I've interviewed him or one of his associates in the past. But they're doing great work going around the country, talking to folks and organizing people around the 10th Amendment. And I've actually seen the mainstream media demonizing the states' rights movement, saying that they're secessionists and they want war, saying that if the states claim they have any powers, any sovereignty under the 9th and 10th Amendment, that it's some act of treason. And I've heard this worship now for several years of Abraham Lincoln, and newscast everywhere saying there may be a new civil war. The states don't want to go along with the New World Order. I saw a bizarre clip from Fox last week where they had a guest on saying, we've got to have the TSA stick their hands down kids' pants. It's part of a New World Order. In fact, don't let me forget, guys, to get that clip. Aaron Dykes posted it on Friday at Infowars.com. I want to play that video clip tomorrow. Fox News guest says TSA doing what it has to in New World Order was the headline. I mean, they've gotten to the point now where they're not denying what they're doing anymore. They're just throwing it in your face and saying resistance is futile. This is the way it is, and it's a psychological warfare tactic. So for 2 segments by himself, Stewart Rhodes, and the next 2 segments, then with him, Brandon Smith for 1 segment, then Michael Bolden in there for the last segment. And then after we're done, I've done 1 video in the new studio. Still not 100% done, but it's almost there. I've done 1 other interview with a toxicologist on fluoride, Conant, and this will be my first roundtable discussion with folks that we'll post coming up in about 3 or 4 days or so, the interview we do today at prisonplanet.tv. So you'll hear the live, in-studio, radio/prisonplanet.tv interviews with the next 3 guests we've got, and then we're going to go into the new studio around the roundtable, 1 format of interviews we're going to be having. We also have a news set we've built, so a lot of new TV shows and programs we're going to be launching here in the near future. But more and more, I do have to just cool my heels a little bit and just sit down and try to relax and overall cool my jets, because when I openly see them come out and announce with a select group of corporations that they're going to force everyone to have a government-issued Internet ID to even be able to surf the Internet, and then I see the White House lie about the full intent of it, it's just such incredible deception that we're dealing with as a society, and they are just trying to break our will to accept all of this garbage. But clearly tomorrow from 11 to 2 p.m. Central on the main weekday show, I'm going to be spending a lot of time on Ron Paul, on Donald Trump. I've written a lot of notes here that I wanted to get to today, but I didn't get to in the last hour, dealing with how I see the election cycle shaking out this year and what I think our strategy should be regardless of that. But I will say this in the next 50 seconds. Ron Paul running, and he is going to run. You know he's going to announce in the next week or 2. Ron Paul running will be a win because he'll be able to inject real issues into the rest of those globalist front people like Mitt Romney and Donald Trump. And so that's going to be a big win. And then that will position the Paul name, when everybody sees everything he was going to talk about in these debates come true in the next 4 years, that will position Rand Paul for the run in 2016. Or anybody else that's basically following the Constitution and Bill of Rights, but that name, I mean, you think Paul's got more power now because of the last run 4 years ago. Get ready. We'll be right back. Stay with us. got Stewart Rhodes, founder and director of Oath Keepers, served as U.S. Army paratrooper. Stewart graduated from Yale Law School in 2004, also worked in the Ron Paul campaign and in the Ron Paul's congressional office in D.C. Oathkeepers.org is his website. And we've also got in train Brandon Smith with him, and also Michael Bolden, the 10th Amendment Center, dealing with the state standing up to the federal government. The federal government itself sold out to the internationalist. Stewart, I want to get into the 10 orders you guys won't follow, how vital it is to reach out to military and police so they understand the authoritarian direction that's being engineered publicly here in the U.S. But before we go there, you've been listening the last hour off and on. As I went over the open announcement of the internet kill switch in place, even if Congress doesn't pass it, just like they're trying to shut down coal power plants, even if Congress won't pass it through the executive. Now an internet ID with private corporations administering it, but it being issued by the government, by Homeland Security, and they admit the IRS will track everything you do for your safety. I mean, this is total surveillance, Fourth Amendment violation. But if any of the states stand up and complain, they're not supposed to do that because according to the people who think the federal government's absolute power, the states have no rights. In fact, they shouldn't even exist. In fact, they don't exist.
That's right. They're trying to do the same thing to our states as was done in Nazi Germany, as was done in Russia, which has turned the states into powerless functionaries of the national government. And that's what they've done. They've taken all the power from the states, all the power from the people, and gathered it to Washington, D.C. So we have to sidestep that program and get back to our Constitution and revitalize our communities. And we need to have alternate communication systems, both in the form of ham radio, perhaps in the form of couriers. All of these things must be set up ahead of time, so when they pull the plug, it doesn't matter to us. We've got something else to go to.
Please continue.
And that's where we've launched Operation Sleeping Giant to wake up the veterans. That's our new website, www.operationsleepinggiant.org, and focused on the veterans because we believe that with the leadership of the veterans in communities and getting all the VFW halls, DAV, American Legion, et cetera, on board, they can then start to set up the communication networks. They have the training. They understand what it's like to prepare for worst-case scenarios. I don't got to convince them that bad things can happen. They know. They've been trained to deal with it, and they can be leaders in their communities to revitalize the Republic from the bottom up. And we're working in close tandem with 10th Amendment Center and the Notify Now Tour because that is the constitutional remedy. It's not military coup. It's not just submitting. The constitutional remedy that Jefferson and Madison gave us was to go to the legislatures and say we are going to stand up and interpose ourselves between an abusive federal government and our people. We're going to
and this hoax is run that we're going to need to have a new Abraham Lincoln invade the other states that don't go along with federal domination if the states do anything. I mean, I've seen MSNBC say the states are not allowed to even complain. The states have no power. They do not exist. The federal government is allowed to do whatever they want. There is no Bill of Rights. There is no Constitution. Explain to people what the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, Bill of Rights really does state and why we need to get control of our states now.
Well, the Constitution is simply the founders' chosen method of protecting our natural rights. As the Declaration of Independence said itself, all rights come from God. That's where our rights come from. Government comes next, created by us to protect our rights. Whenever any form of government becomes abusive of those ends, it is our right and our duty to throw it off. And the mechanism that was put in place in our Constitution for doing that is the 10th Amendment. As the Bill of Rights itself makes very clear, to prevent misconstruction, they put in those additional articles. The preamble to the Bill of Rights itself makes very clear what it's for.
And you're a constitutional lawyer yourself. You graduated with high honors from Yale, but anybody can read the 9th and 10th Amendment. I mean, all powers not expressly delegated to the federal government are reserved to the states or the people. And the 9th goes on and expands and says, look, you know, not just the rights that are enumerated here. There's a lot more than just this.
And it says, it shall not be construed. That's a guide to interpretation. You shall not construe the Constitution to mean that only the rights listed here belong to the people, and yet the courts have done just that. And so that's why we can't go begging to the federal courts for permission to exercise our rights or please recognize our rights. I mean, there's no listing in the Bill of Rights of a right to have children or the right to raise your children or the right to marry. But you still have the right to do that. So our rights don't come from the government. It's a bill of shall nots.
And by the way, they've already gotten rid of property rights. Folks, when you pay these property taxes, you don't really own your land. When you pay an income tax, we didn't have that till 1913. It wasn't popularized till the 50s. That's paid directly to the private Federal Reserve. The truth is, our federal government got taken over a long time ago by private corporate interests that are not free market. They've confused the issues. And now I've learned that not just in Chicago, but all over the country, they're under federal orders. They're telling, and you notice he's getting his new education head from Chicago, Obama is, parents, you're not, they actually say this in the paper, you're not trusted to pack your child's lunch. You must buy it from Boss Hog. You must buy it from the company store. And so because it's not in the Bill of Rights that you're allowed to pack your child's lunch, they're saying you don't have that right. That's what's so dangerous about tyranny. We're going to stick our hands down your pants. We're going to put you in radiation bakers. We're going to track everything you buy, sell, and do with no warrants. We're not going to let you pack your child lunch. I mean, the tyranny is just galloping. The dam has broken, Stewart. And now we have the remedy of the 10th Amendment, the people's legislatures, until the same year they gave us the IRS, the same year they gave us the private Federal Reserve. They took our U.S. senators away. For folks that don't know, for the first 170, 100, whatever it was, years of this country, the people elected their legislatures, and the senators were U.S. senators were a creature of the state, voted on by the legislature, and the states who had so much power they could recall them. And not even Lincoln, burning down half the country, could get those senators away from the states. Well, they got rid of them in 1913 with the 17th Amendment. And so now, imagine, the senators were creatures of the states, and they got Mr. Maddow and the rest of them up there on TV, I mean Rachel Maddow, whatever its name is, telling us there is no state. There is no right, period.
That's right. And the answer is, with your children, pull them out of public school. And the answer is, when it comes to the rights of your states, don't recognize and don't buy into their rhetoric. This is a revitalization of the Confederacy. This is racism. Long before that, from Jefferson's time on, the states stood up and nullified against the Fugitive Slave Act, for example. Northern juries refused to convict those who were sheltering slaves on the Underground Railroad.
Well, what would we do if we got a dictator and the states would line up and say, no, that's what it's for? And all I'm saying is they're trying to sell it again as if it is a second American Civil War, and that if a state has any 10th Amendment rights, that it somehow is calling for secession.
That's right. That's why the military is so key. If we can show the military the original design of the Constitution and get them to see how illegitimate that would be, then they'll stand down and won't do it. And the other side of it is for us to stand up. We want them to stand down and for the states to stand up. And if both sides of the coin do that, the globalists will lead are powerless.
But, I mean, shouldn't the government, Stewart Rhodes, not trust parents to pack their children's lunch? I mean, period. No lunch is allowed. I mean, in our day, we could walk home from school and eat lunch. That's Al-Qaeda. Packing your son or daughter a lunch is Al-Qaeda. Just admit that you're a freak from the past, and so am I, and that it's bizarre to not want to have TSA fondle your wife.
Well, they want to infantilize us all. They want to treat us all like children. Only thing you're allowed to do, the only thing that's legitimate, is to vote. And once you vote, then everything else that the founders wanted us to do is now considered verboten, forbidden and illegitimate.
And you vote for a basket of people like Donald Trump. Well, they're really putting him in there now to pose as the fake populist, kind of like Obama did for the Democrats. This is a guy in the penny stocks. This is a guy hooked in with Schumer. This is a globalist. This is a guy who's declared bankruptcy, had all these wives, on and on and on. He's a guy who loves to take old ladies' property.
That's right. When I worked for the Institute for Justice as an intern one summer in law school, there was a case going through where Donald Trump tried to use eminent domain to seize an old lady's house. She wouldn't sell it to him, so he wanted to take it through the force of government to put a parking garage in for his limos. And thankfully, she had good lawyers, good volunteer lawyers, who kicked his butt.
Well, that's when he says, let's take the oil from Iraq. Folks, we're not getting the oil. The oil company's already got that oil. We'll be right back. Ask yourselves, what are you doing in this time of great challenge? What are you doing to unlock minds?